Put your mark down or exit. My husband sneered, brandishing the accord in the dwelling I bought. He believed ousting me would crush me. I smirked, endorsed, and departed. Half a day later, his attorney yelled at him. You idiot, do you realize what you've done? What if the man you married, the one who swore to love and protect you, tried to steal every single thing you owned, your home, your legacy, your very dignity? And what if, in that moment of betrayal, you saw your chance to finally destroy him? Because for me, Meredith, that day started not with a kiss, but with my husband Stuart, sitting in my chair, at my desk, shoving a document across the polished mahogany. His voice? Cold. Arrogant. And the look in his eyes, pure, predatory gleam. It was 7 a.m. The morning sun was just starting to filter through the plantation shutters, casting long, barred shadows across the rug. I'd just come back from my run, still in my leggings, expecting coffee. Instead, I walked into an ambush. You can't be serious, Stuart. I managed, my voice barely a whisper. I wasn't scared, not really. I was just stunned by the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it all. He smirked, leaning back, lacing his fingers behind his head. He was wearing the silk robe I bought him for Christmas, the one that cost more than my first car. I am deadly serious, Meredith. Marriage is a partnership. 50-50. But since you've been so difficult lately about my business ventures, I think it's time we restructure. He pushed the papers closer. This is a post-nuptial agreement. It grants me title to the house and a 50% controlling interest in your design firm. It's only fair, considering the emotional support I provided you. Emotional support? I almost laughed right in his smug face. This man, the one who forgot my birthday 3 years in a row, who called my career a cute little hobby, talking about support? And if I don't sign? I asked, walking slowly toward the desk, my heart starting to pound a cold, steady beat. His eyes lit up with that chilling, triumphant spark. Then I file for divorce. And I will drag it out. I will freeze your assets. I will ruin your reputation in this town. My lawyer, Lionel, says I have a very strong case for spousal support. I've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, you see. But if you sign this, we stay married. We work it out. I just need security. He wasn't asking for security. He was orchestrating a robbery. He wanted the deed to the estate my grandmother left me. He wanted the company I built from the ground up while he was off playing golf. I looked down at the papers. They were drafted hastily, probably by that bus-bench lawyer he played poker with. Transfer of deed, assignment of equity. The words swam before my eyes, but their meaning was crystal clear. He truly thought he had me cornered. He thought I was the same woman who'd smiled sweetly and kept the peace for 4 long years. He thought I was terrified of losing him. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the graying hair at his temples that I used to find distinguished, now just looking tired. I saw the softness around his jaw from too much scotch and too little work. And then, I saw the cruelty. Undisguised. So, it's the house or the marriage? I asked, picking up the heavy fountain pen from the desk set. It's about fairness, Meredith. He corrected, though his eyes followed the pen with hungry anticipation. Sign it, and we can go back to normal. Don't, and I'll make sure you lose everything anyway. I uncapped the pen. The gold nib glinted in the morning light. My heart should have been racing. I should have been screaming, throwing things, calling the police. But a strange, icy calm had settled over me. It was the calm of a surgeon before the first cut. Okay, Stuart, I said softly. You win. His eyes widened. He hadn't expected it to be this easy. He leaned forward, practically salivating. Good girl. You're making the right choice. I bent over the desk. I didn't hesitate. I signed my name, Meredith Blackwood, with a flourish on the bottom of the last page. The ink was dark. Permanent. There, I said, capping the pen and setting it down with a deliberate click. Stuart snatched the papers up instantly, scanning the signature as if checking for a trick. Finally, he breathed, a look of pure triumph washing over his face. See, was that so hard? No, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my house keys. I dropped them onto the mahogany desk. They landed with a heavy thud. Then my left hand. I slid the platinum band off my finger, the ring I'd bought myself because his card was maxed out at the time, and placed it next to the keys. What are you doing? Stuart asked, his brow furrowing. You said sign or get out. I replied, my voice steady. I signed. Now I'm getting out. Wait, you don't have to leave right this second, he stammered, confused by my utter lack of tears. We can have breakfast. Celebrate our new arrangement. Enjoy the house, Stuart, I said, turning on my heel. It's everything you ever wanted. I walked out of the office, down the hallway lined with photos of my ancestors, and out the front door. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't look back. I just walked to my car, got in, and drove away. As I pulled out of the driveway, I checked the rearview mirror. Stuart was standing in the window, holding the papers against the glass, grinning like a man who just won the lottery. He had no idea. He absolutely no idea that he had just signed his own death warrant. The door to the hotel suite clicked shut behind me, and the silence that followed was heavy, pressing against my eardrums. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence of a life detonating in slow motion. I dropped my purse on the marble entryway table and walked into the living area. The suite at the Ritz-Carlton was impeccable. Beige tones, fresh orchids, a view of the city skyline that usually made me feel powerful. Today, it just felt cold. I sat on the edge of the velvet sofa and stared at my hands. They weren't shaking. Why weren't they shaking? I had just walked away from my home, my marriage, and technically, on paper, my entire fortune. I should be hysterical. I should be calling my mother, crying into the phone about how my husband had finally lost his mind. But the hysteria didn't come. Instead, a deep, hollow ache settled in my chest. It wasn't regret for the house or the money. I knew where those stood. It was a mourning for the time. For 4 years. I had given that man 4 years of my life. I had folded his laundry, listened to his endless pitches for business ideas that made no sense, hosted his dreadful family for holidays, and excused his rudeness to waiters. I had shrunk myself to make him feel big. I walked over to the minibar and poured a sparkling water. My reflection in the mirror looked tired. My eyes were puffy, and there were lines around my mouth that hadn't been there when I met Stuart. You did it, Meredith, I whispered to the empty room. You finally pulled the trigger. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a notification from the smart home system. Motion detected. Living room. I shouldn't have looked. I knew I shouldn't have. It was emotional masochism. But I picked up the phone and opened the app. The feed loaded in crisp high definition. There was Stuart. And he wasn't alone. He was on the phone, pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace, a glass of my best scotch in his hand. He looked ecstatic. He was gesturing wildly, laughing. I tapped the listen button. Yeah, she just walked out. Stuart's voice, tinny through the phone's speaker. Left the keys and everything. I told you, Lionel, she's weak. She couldn't handle the pressure. The house is mine. The business? Yeah, I'll be going into the office tomorrow to introduce myself to the staff as the new CEO owner. It's a gold mine, and she's been running it like a charity. He took a swig of the scotch. No, she won't fight it. She's probably crying at her sister's place right now. She loves me too much to drag this through court. I've got her exactly where I want her. I turned off the screen. My hand gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. She loves me too much. That was his calculation. That was his entire strategy. He banked everything on the assumption that I was a desperate, aging woman who would pay any price to keep a husband. He thought my dignity had a price tag, and he had just bought it for the cost of a threatening legal document. I walked to the window and looked down at the busy street below. Cars were rushing by, people going to work, lives moving forward. The world didn't stop because my marriage had imploded. A notification popped up on my email. It was from Paige, my executive assistant. Subject: the package is ready. Body: Meredith, I've compiled the files you asked for. The forensic accountant finished the report at 4 a.m. You were right. It's worse than we thought. Do you want me to send it to Claudia now or wait? I typed back a single word. Wait. I wasn't ready to drop the hammer just yet. Not until the ink was dry on Stuart's little victory lap. I sat back down and closed my eyes, letting the memories wash over me. Before the lawyers, before the betrayal, before the hatred. I needed to remember why. I needed to remember the woman I was before Stuart Wilson charmed his way into my life and tried to dismantle it brick by brick. I needed to go back to the beginning, to the night at the charity gala, where he spilled red wine on my dress and apologized with a smile that I thought was charming, but now realized was the grin of a wolf spotting a lamb who had strayed too far from the flock. It was 4 years ago, almost to the day. I was 48 then, and I had been single for a decade. My business, Meredith Blackwood Interiors, had just landed the contract for the new city library, and I felt on top of the world professionally. Personally, I was lonely. I wouldn't admit it to anyone, certainly not to my employees who saw me as the Iron Lady of Design. But going home to an empty 6-bedroom estate every night had started to wear on me. I was at the Children's Hospital Gala. A black-tie affair, the kind where the champagne is mediocre, but the networking is essential. I was standing near the silent auction tables, debating whether to bid on a vintage trip to Napa, when a voice rumbled behind me. "You know, looking at that painting makes me feel like I need glasses, and I have perfect vision." I turned around. He was tall, wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He had that silver fox look, salt and pepper hair, rugged jawline, eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "It's abstract expressionism," I said, smiling politely. "It's supposed to challenge your perspective." "It challenges my wallet." He laughed. "I'm Stuart Wilson. I'm in investments." Investments? It's such a vague word. I should have asked what kind right then. I should have asked for a business card, a LinkedIn profile, a tax return. But I didn't. I was charmed. "Meredith Blackwood," I replied. "The Meredith Blackwood." He raised an eyebrow. "The one who turned the old grain silo into that incredible art gallery downtown. I'm a huge fan of your work. You have an eye for structure that is rare." He knew my work. He complimented my intelligence, not just my dress. That was the first hook. We spent the rest of the evening talking. He was attentive, funny, and seemingly wealthy. He talked about his time in Europe, his portfolio of startups, his passion for vintage cars. He made me feel interesting. He made me feel seen. When the check came for our drinks at the hotel bar later, he patted his pockets with a look of mock horror. "Oh God, I must have left my wallet in my other jacket. I changed so quickly for this event. Meredith, I am mortified." "It's fine," I said, handing the bartender my black card. "It's just drinks." "No, it's not fine," he insisted, grabbing my hand. His skin was warm. "I owe you dinner tomorrow night. The French place on 4th. Please let me make it up to you." I agreed. Of course I agreed. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. It's what the psychologists call love bombing, but at the time, it just felt like a fairy tale. Flowers sent to my office every Monday. Weekend trips to the coast where he drove my convertible because his Jaguar was in the shop. Long texts at midnight telling me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever met. He moved in by month 4. It made sense, he said. Why maintain 2 households when we were always together? He was between leases anyway, looking for the perfect penthouse. "I want to take care of you, Meredith," he told me one night, sitting on my patio, drinking my wine. "You've worked so hard. You deserve a partner who carries the load." Carries the load. The irony is so sharp it could cut glass. I remember one specific afternoon, about 6 months into the relationship. We were discussing finances, or rather, I was trying to. I mentioned setting up a meeting with my financial advisor to discuss merging some accounts for household expenses. Stuart's face darkened just for a second. A flash of irritation that vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Baby, why do we need to involve lawyers and accountants? Doesn't that kill the romance?" "I trust you. Don't you trust me?" "I do, but I have assets, Meredith," he said, his voice dropping to a hurt whisper. "I have stocks, crypto, offshore holdings, but right now they're tied up in a liquidity event. Once that clears, I'm going to buy you a villa in Tuscany. I promise. Until then, can't we just be us?" He made me feel cheap for asking. He made me feel like a gold digger for worrying about my own fortune. So, I stopped asking. I let him use the secondary credit card for groceries, which quickly turned into charges for designer suits and golf clubs. I let him redecorate his home office on my dime because he needed an environment conducive to high-level trading. I ignored the red flags because I wanted the fantasy to be real. I wanted to be the power couple he described. I didn't see that I was the power, and he was just the couple. And then he introduced me to his family. That was when the fantasy began to crack, revealing the rot underneath. If Stuart was a leech, his mother Lorraine and his sister Darla were the swamp he crawled out of. I met them 2 weeks after our quick courthouse wedding. Stuart had insisted on a small ceremony. Just us, baby. I don't need a spectacle, which I later realized was to prevent any of his creditors or ex-partners from finding him. But once the ring was on his finger, the family appeared like vultures, sensing a fresh kill. They arrived for a weekend visit that lasted a month. Lorraine was a woman in her 70s who wore too much leopard print and smoked slim cigarettes on my non-smoking lanai. Darla was in her 30s, divorced twice, with a perpetual sneer and a story about how the world had wronged her. So, this is the place, Darla said when she walked into the foyer, dropping her bags on my antique Persian rug. She didn't say hello. She just spun around, assessing the square footage like a real estate appraiser. Must be nice to have old money. Some of us actually have to work. I work very hard, Darla, I said, forcing a smile. I run a company. Right. Decorating, she scoffed. Picking out pillows. Stuart laughed. He actually laughed. Now, Darla, Meredith is very talented. She picked out this whole house, didn't she? They settled in, and the nightmare began. My house, my sanctuary, became a hostel. The refrigerator was raided nightly. My expensive face creams appeared in the guest bathroom, half empty. One evening, over dinner, a roast I had paid the caterer to prepare because Lorraine complained that my cooking was too healthy, the topic of money finally came up explicitly. Stuart tells me you're not helping Darla with her situation, Lorraine said, stabbing a potato with her fork. I put down my wine glass. I'm sorry. What situation? Her car, Meredith. Stuart snapped, reaching for the wine bottle. I told you. Her transmission blew. She can't get to her job interviews. Darla didn't have job interviews. Darla spent her days scrolling Facebook and complaining about her ex-husbands. I didn't know, I said. How much is the repair? Oh, it's totaled, Darla said through a mouthful of beef. I need a new one. Stuart said you guys were looking at getting a new SUV. I could just take the BMW. My BMW? My X5 that I use for client meetings? I am not giving away my car, I said, my voice rising. Stuart put a hand on my arm. A heavy, silencing grip. Honey, don't be selfish. We have 3 cars. You hardly drive the convertible in winter. Family helps family. That's what I love about you, your generosity. He did it right there at the table. He weaponized my own virtue against me. If I said no, I was the stingy rich looking down on his poor, struggling family. If I said yes, I was a doormat. We can discuss alone, I said stiffly. Alone? Lorraine cackled. Did you hear that, Stu? She wants to charge her sister-in-law interest. Unbelievable. After all the emotional support we've given you. There was that phrase again. Emotional support. It was their currency, but the account was always empty. The breaking point of that visit came a week later. I came home early from the office to find Lorraine and Darla in my master bedroom. They had my jewelry box open. Darla was holding up my grandmother's emerald brooch against her chest in the mirror. What are you doing? I demanded, standing in the doorway. Darla jumped, but Lorraine didn't even flinch. Just looking, Meredith. Relax. You have so much stuff. You probably forgot you even had this. It would look lovely on Darla for her date tonight. Get out, I said, shaking. Get out of my room. When I told Stuart about it later, he sighed as if I were the unreasonable toddler. They're just curious, babe. They've never seen nice things. You made them feel like thieves. Mom was crying in the guest room. They were going to take it, Stuart. You don't know that, he snapped. You're so paranoid about your precious things. People matter more than things, Meredith. Try to remember that. I ended up buying Darla a used Honda just to get them to leave. I told myself it was the price of peace. I wrote the check, and Stuart kissed me and told me I was the best wife in the world. But as I watched them drive away, I felt a knot in my stomach. I realized they didn't look at me and see a family member. They looked at me and saw a host organism. And Stuart? He wasn't protecting me from the parasites. He was the one holding the door open for them. The liquidity events Stuart kept talking about never happened. 6 months turned into a year, then 2. Every time I brought up his contribution to the household expenses, there was a new excuse. The market was down. The regulators were holding up the merger. His partners were dragging their feet. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. Admitting he was a liar meant admitting I was a fool. And my pride was a heavy thing to carry. But the truth has a nasty habit of surfacing, usually in the form of a paper trail. It happened on a Tuesday. I was working from home because I had a cold. Stuart had left early, claiming he had a high-stakes negotiation in the city with a group of angel investors. He was wearing his best suit, the charcoal Armani I had bought him for our anniversary. The mail arrived around noon. Usually, Stuart intercepted the mail. He was obsessive about it, rushing to the mailbox the moment the carrier arrived. He claimed he was waiting for sensitive contract documents, but today, he wasn't there. I sorted through the pile. Junk mail, magazines, a bill for the pool maintenance. And then, a thick envelope from American Express. It was addressed to Stuart, but it was the black card account, the one where I was the primary account holder, and he was an authorized user. I rarely checked the physical statements because I had autopay set up on my business account. And frankly, I was too busy running a multi-million-dollar company to micromanage his grocery spending. But the envelope felt heavy, too heavy for groceries. I took a letter opener and slit the top. I pulled out the statement. It was 6 pages long. I sat down at the kitchen island, my tea forgotten. My eyes scanned the lines, and my breath hitched in my throat. The Sapphire Club, Las Vegas, $1,200. Caesar's Palace Suite, $1,800. Rolex Boutique, $12,500. Delta Airlines First Class 2 tickets, $3,400. The dates. The dates didn't match his stories. The Las Vegas charge was from a weekend when he said he was at a spiritual retreat in Sedona, with no cell service. The Rolex charge was from 3 days ago, my birthday, when he had given me a card and said his gift was on back order. And the airline tickets, 2 tickets to Miami for next weekend. I felt sick. Not the cold sick, but a deep, visceral nausea. I went to my computer and logged into the banking portal. I dug deeper. I looked at the cash withdrawals. $500 here, $800 there, ATM fees at casinos, ATM fees at nightclubs. Then I looked at his business deposits. There were none. 0. In 2 years of marriage, Stuart Wilson had contributed exactly 0 to our joint account. I had been funding a playboy lifestyle for a man who claimed to be an empire builder. I heard the garage door open. Stuart was home early. I scrambled to shove the papers back into the envelope, but then I stopped. Why was I hiding? I was the victim here. I left the statement spread out on the marble counter. Stuart walked in, loosening his tie. He looked flushed. Happy. Meredith! Great news! The meeting was a home run. They're talking about a 7-figure injection by next quarter. He stopped when he saw me. He saw the papers. He saw my face. What's that? He asked, his smile faltering slightly. This, I said, pointing to the line item for the Rolex, is your 7-figure injection. Who is it for, Stuart? Because it certainly isn't on my wrist. He froze for a split second. I saw the panic, but then the mask slid back into place. He sighed, a sound of immense disappointment. You opened my mail? That's a federal crime, Meredith. It's my account, I shouted, slamming my hand on the counter. I pay the bill. Who did you go to Vegas with? Who are you going to Miami with? He walked over to the fridge and grabbed a water, taking his time. Gaslighting requires patience, and he was a master. The Rolex is an investment piece, Meredith. I bought it to flip it. You have to spend money to make money. And Vegas? That was a bachelor party for a potential client. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd get jealous and irrational like you are right now. And the 2 tickets to Miami? I challenged, my voice shaking. My assistant, he said smoothly. I hired a virtual assistant to help with the logistics. She's meeting me there to handle the paperwork. You don't have a business, I screamed. You don't have clients. You have nothing, Stuart. You are nothing but a leech. His face went cold. He set the water down. Careful, Meredith. You sound like a shrew. Is this really how you talk to your husband, the man who loves you? I'm trying to build a future for us, and you're obsessing over pennies. $12,000 is not pennies. It is to people who think big. He sneered. Maybe that's your problem. You have a small mind. You're a decorator, not a visionary. He walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there with the evidence of his betrayal. He didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He made me feel like I was the crazy one for caring about theft. That night, he slept in the guest room. But I didn't sleep at all. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, realizing that the man in the other room wasn't just lazy or unsuccessful. He was dangerous. He believed his own lies. And I needed to know who was sitting in the other seat on that flight to Miami. I didn't cancel the Miami trip. Instead, I hired a private investigator named Mr. Vance. He was expensive, discreet, and terrifyingly efficient. I gave him the flight details and told him I wanted pictures. 3 days later, while Stuart was supposedly closing deals in South Beach, Mr. Vance sent me a Dropbox link. I sat in my office, the door locked, and clicked the link. The photos were high resolution. There was Stuart, wearing the linen shirt I bought him, laughing at a poolside bar. And next to him, draped over him like a cheap accessory, was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 25. Blonde, incredibly fit, wearing a bikini that looked more like dental floss than swimwear. Subject: Tiffany Miller, age 24. Personal trainer at Ironclad Gym. Current residence: a studio apartment in the Garment District. Rent is 3 months overdue. I scrolled through the photos. They were drinking champagne. They were kissing. In one photo, he was applying sunscreen to her back with a familiarity that made my stomach turn. But the real knife in the heart was the video file. Mr. Vance had managed to get close enough to their table at dinner to record audio. The restaurant was noisy, but the voices were clear enough. I put on my headphones. "She's so annoying, baby." Stuart's voice. "She watches every penny now. I had to fight just to get the limit raised on the card for this trip." "When are you going to leave her?" Tiffany's voice was high, nasal, and whining. "You said by summer? I'm tired of living in that dump. I want to live in the big house with the pool. I can't just leave, Tiff." Stuart explained, sounding like he was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "If I leave now, I get nothing. We signed a prenup, remember? I get zero." I paused the video. A prenup. We did have a prenup. It was the one smart thing I had done, insisted upon by my father before he passed. It protected my premarital assets. Stuart had signed it begrudgingly 4 years ago. I pressed play. "So what do we do?" Tiffany asked. "We break her," Stuart said. His voice dropped, becoming sinister. "I'm working on it. I'm making her life miserable. My lawyer says if I can prove she's mentally unstable, or if I can coerce her into signing a postnup that voids the original agreement, we're golden. I just need to push her, make her feel like the marriage failing is her fault. She's desperate to be loved. If I threaten to leave, she'll pay anything to make me stay. And then we get the house. Then we get the house. We get the company. We get everything. And we kick the old hag out to the curb." I ripped the headphones off my head and threw them across the room. Old hag. Break her. Coerce her. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt too thin. I stood up and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. For 4 years I thought I was in a marriage with a man who was just irresponsible and a bit selfish. But this was predation. I wasn't a wife to him. I was a target. He was literally plotting to drive me insane or desperate enough to sign away my life's work so he could move his gym rat mistress into my grandmother's estate. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I saw the tears streaming down my face. But beneath the tears I saw something else. I saw the woman who had built a business empire in a male-dominated industry. I saw the woman who had navigated recessions, difficult clients, and contract disputes. Stuart thought I was weak. He thought I was a desperate, aging woman who would do anything for a scrap of affection. He was about to find out that the old hag knew how to fight. I wiped my face. I picked up the phone. I didn't call Stuart. I didn't scream at him. I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. "Claudia," I said when the voice on the other end answered. "It's Meredith. I need you. And I need you to be the shark everyone says you are." "Meredith?" Claudia's voice was warm, but sharp. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said, my voice hardening into steel. "My husband is trying to steal my estate. I want to destroy him. Legally, financially, and completely. When can we meet? Claudia Vance was not just a divorce lawyer. She was a force of nature in a Chanel suit. Her office was on the 40th floor, overlooking the city, and she charged $900 an hour. She was worth every penny. I sat opposite her, the investigator's report and the transcription of the audio recording spread out on her glass desk. Claudia read through them in silence, her expression unreadable behind her designer glasses. Occasionally, she would circle something with a red pen. Finally, she looked up. "He's an amateur," she stated flatly. "A greedy, stupid amateur. But amateurs can be dangerous because they don't know the rules. He wants me to sign a postnup," I said. "He told his mistress he's going to pressure me into voiding the prenup." "Of course he is." Claudia leaned back. "Because under the current prenup, he walks away with nothing but his clothes and whatever is in his personal account, which, according to this forensic report, is zero. He needs you to voluntarily give him the assets. So, I just say no? We could." Claudia tapped her pen on the desk. "We could file for divorce today on grounds of adultery. We have the proof. You'd win. He'd get kicked out." "That's not enough," I cut in. The anger flared in my chest again. "Claudia, he humiliated me. He brought his family into my home to steal from me. He spent my money on her. He called me an old hag and plotted to break me mentally. I don't just want a divorce. I want him to hurt. I want him to feel the panic I felt when I saw those bank statements." Claudia smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." She pulled a file from her drawer. "Do you remember 2 years ago when you reorganized your business structure? You moved the house and the majority of your liquid assets into the Blackwood Family Trust." "Yes." I nodded. "For tax purposes. And do you remember," she continued, "that because Stuart was your spouse, we needed him to sign a waiver acknowledging that those assets were moving into a trust where you were the sole beneficiary? He signed a stack of papers that day," I recalled. "He didn't read any of them. He was too busy playing Angry Birds on his phone." "Exactly." Claudia's eyes gleamed. "He signed a spousal waiver of interest. Basically, he formally acknowledged, with a notary present, that the house and the company are trust property, not marital property. He has zero claim to them. None. Even if you burn the prenup, the trust protects them. He doesn't know that." I realized. He thinks the house is still in my name. He thinks he's a legal genius because he watches Suits. Claudia scoffed. "Now, here is the beautiful part. If he attempts to claim ownership of trust property, knowing he has waived his rights, he is committing fraud. But we need him to commit to the act. We need him to demand the specific assets he has already waived. He's going to present me with a postnup," I said, seeing the plan form. "He's going to list the house and the company. If you sign a document giving him the house," Claudia said slowly, "you are essentially giving him nothing, because you personally don't own the house. The trust does. You can't give away what you don't hold title to as an individual. His document will be worthless," I whispered. "But he will think he won. He will think he won." Claudia agreed. "And he will act on it. He will try to take possession. He might try to sell it or borrow against it. And the moment he tries to exercise ownership over trust assets, that's when we nail him, not just for divorce, but for attempted fraud and extortion." She slid a piece of paper toward me. "This is the plan. It requires you to be an actress, Meredith. You have to let him think his plan is working. You have to let him bully you. You have to let him present those papers. And then I sign them." I finished the sentence. "You sign them." Claudia nodded. "And you walk away. You give him the rope. And we let him hang himself." I looked at the city below. It was a risky game. It required me to endure his cruelty for a little while longer. But the thought of the look on his face, the look when he realized he had played himself, was too sweet to resist. "Draw it up," I said. "I'm ready to put on the performance of a lifetime." The week leading up to the ultimatum was the longest of my life. I had to live with a man I despised, share a bed with a man who smelled like another woman's cheap perfume, and pretend I was falling apart. I stopped wearing makeup. I let the house get a little messy. I would accidentally leave bills on the counter and then cry when he asked about them. "I'm just so stressed, Stuart." I sobbed one evening over a burnt dinner. I feel like I'm losing control of everything. The business is hard. The house is too much work. He ate it up. He would rub my back with fake sympathy and say, "Maybe you need to simplify, babe. Let me take some of the burden. We need to secure our future so you can relax." I also planted the bait. I left a folder on my desk labeled Asset Valuation 2024. Inside, I put documents, fake ones, showing that the house had appreciated to $4 million, and the business had liquid cash reserves of $2 million. I saw him checking the folder when he thought I was in the shower. I watched through the crack in the door as his eyes widened, scanning the numbers. He pulled out his phone and took pictures of the documents. He's sending them to Lionel. I thought. Lionel says we need to move fast. I heard him whisper on the phone in the garage later that night. She's cracking. She's talking about selling the business and moving to an ashram or something. We can't let her sell. I need that equity. Greed, I thought. Greed makes you stupid, Stuart. Finally, the night before the ultimatum, he came home with the briefcase, the brown leather one he bought to look important. He set it down by the door like a weapon. "We need to talk in the morning, Meredith," he said, his voice grave. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us, about how to fix this." "Okay," I said, making my voice tremble. "Whatever you say, Stuart." That brings us back to the moment in the office. The moment I signed the papers, when I walked out of that house, leaving my keys and ring. I didn't drive aimlessly. I drove straight to Claudia's office. He took the bait. I told her as I walked in. "Did he sign?" she asked. "He made me sign. And then he countersigned. He has the documents." "Perfect." Claudia picked up her phone. "I'm initiating the eviction protocol, and I'm sending a courier to the bank to freeze the joint accounts. Not that there's much in them, but it's the principle." "What about the house?" I asked. "He's there now. He thinks it's his. Technically," Claudia smiled, "he is trespassing. But let's give him his night of glory. Let him host his little victory party. The higher he climbs, the harder the fall." I checked my phone again. The notifications from the smart home were rolling in. Front door unlocked. Thermostat set to 68. Music system activated. And then a new notification. Access code created. Guest Tiffany. He hadn't even waited an hour. He had moved her in. He brought her to the house. I told Claudia, my voice cold. "Good," Claudia said. "That just adds to the narrative of emotional distress for the judge. Keep the footage." I sat in the chair in Claudia's office, watching the live feed on my phone. I saw Tiffany walking around my living room, touching my sculptures, putting her feet on my white sofa. I saw Stuart pouring wine, my vintage Bordeaux, into 2 glasses. They toasted, they laughed, they kissed in the home I had built. It took every ounce of restraint not to drive back there and burn the place down. But I waited. I waited because I knew that tomorrow morning, the sheriff was coming. I knew that tomorrow morning, the reality of the trust would hit them like a freight train. "Go to the hotel, Meredith," Claudia said gently. "Get some sleep. Turn off the phone. Tomorrow is going to be a very busy day." "I can't turn it off," I said, watching Stuart carry Tiffany up the stairs toward my master bedroom. "I need to see it. I need to remember this anger, because when he calls me tomorrow begging, I need to remember exactly why I am destroying him." I closed the phone. The trap was sprung. The rat was inside. Now all I had to do was wait for the snap. The screen on my phone was small, but the betrayal was broadcast in 4K resolution. I sat in the darkness of my hotel suite, the glow of the screen illuminating my face, watching the nightmare unfold in real time. It was 8 p.m., barely 12 hours since I had walked out of my front door. Stuart hadn't wasted a single second. My living room, usually a sanctuary of quiet elegance, was packed. And I don't mean a few friends having a glass of wine. I mean it looked like a fraternity house mixer. There were at least 20 people there, most of them strangers to me, probably friends of Tiffany's or Stuart's drinking buddies from the golf club. The music was loud. I could see the bass vibrating the leaves of my ficus tree in the corner. But it was the sight of Stuart that made my blood run cold. He was standing on my coffee table. On the table. The table I had imported from Italy, a piece of travertine stone that was older than this country. He was wearing his suit pants and a button-down shirt that was unbuttoned halfway down his chest, holding a bottle of wine high in the air. I zoomed in on the bottle. It was a Chateau Margaux 1982. A bottle my father had given me on my 40th birthday. He had told me to save it for a moment of supreme happiness. It was worth about $2,000. Stuart was pouring it into red plastic solo cups. To the new chapter! Stuart bellowed, his voice distorted by the microphone on the security camera, but still painfully audible. To taking what is yours! To being the king of the castle! The crowd cheered. Tiffany was right there next to him, laughing. She was wearing my silk kimono, the one I bought in Kyoto, over her clothes like a party favor. She looked drunk, stumbling slightly as she grabbed a cup of the precious wine and chugged it like it was cheap beer. He's destroying it, I whispered to the empty hotel room. He's literally consuming my life. Then Stuart pulled out his phone. I watched on the security feed as he held it up, but then my own phone buzzed with a notification. Stuart Wilson is live on Facebook. I switched apps. There he was, live streaming to the world. What's up, everyone? Stuart shouted into the camera, his face flushed and sweaty. Just wanted to give you a tour of the new HQ for Wilson Global Enterprises. Yeah, we finally got rid of the dead weight. Sometimes you have to cut the anchors to let the ship sail, right? He panned the camera around the room, showing off my art, my furniture, my view. Look at this place, he boasted. This is what happens when you have vision. My ex, well, soon-to-be ex, she didn't get it. She wanted to play it safe. But me? I'm a risk-taker. And look where it got me. He pulled Tiffany into the frame. She giggled and kissed his cheek. Say hi to the future, baby. Hi, she squealed. We're going to redo the kitchen, right, Stu? All this wood is so old-fashioned. Whatever you want, babe, Stuart promised. It's our house now. Comments were rolling in on the live stream. Most were from his sycophantic friends. Congrats, bro. Finally getting what you deserve. Leveling up. But I also saw comments from our mutual acquaintances, from the wives of his golf buddies, from neighbors. Wait, isn't that Meredith's house? Did Meredith move out? This is awkward. He was documenting his own demise. He was creating public, time-stamped evidence of his looting. Every sip of that wine, every unauthorized guest, every claim of ownership was another nail in his legal coffin. I felt a vibration of pure rage starting in my toes and working its way up. It wasn't the sad, heavy grief of the morning. It was a hot, sharp, energizing anger. He wasn't just stealing. He was mocking. He was dancing on the grave of our marriage before the body was even cold. He climbed down from the table, nearly knocking over a Ming vase. All right, listen up, he shouted to the room. The pool is open. Who wants to swim? A roar of approval went up. I watched as people started stripping down to their underwear, running toward the sliding glass doors that led to my pool area. I closed the app. I couldn't watch them defile the water. I stood up and walked to the desk in the hotel room. I had been waiting. I had been hesitating, perhaps out of some lingering sense of mercy, or maybe just shock. But mercy was gone now. The sight of that 1982 Margaux being poured into a solo cup had killed the last shred of empathy I had for Stuart Wilson. I opened my laptop. Ideally, I would have waited until morning to start the financial execution. But Stuart wanted to play king of the castle tonight. Fine. Let's see how the king rules when the treasury is empty. I cracked my knuckles, opened the spreadsheet I'd prepared, and logged into the administration portal for my life. It was time to turn off the lights. The laptop screen glowed with the cold, blue light of vengeance. I had laid out everything in a systematic order, a digital firing squad ready to execute Stuart's lifestyle. I wasn't just angry. I was methodical. This is what Stuart never understood about me. He thought my success was luck or inheritance. He didn't understand that I built a company because I understood logistics. I understood leverage. And I understood details. Step 1, the credit cards. I logged into the American Express corporate portal. There it was, Stuart's supplementary card. The balance was currently sitting at $14,200, just for this month. I clicked on the card number. Status, active. Action, suspend. Reason, lost/stolen. I didn't just want it declined. I wanted it flagged. The next time he tried to swipe it, I wanted the merchant to look at him like a criminal. I clicked confirm. Status, suspended. Next, the joint checking account. This was the account he used to pay his business expenses, which were really just lunches and golf fees. I transferred the entire balance, which was mostly my money anyway, into my personal savings account, leaving exactly $5, just enough to keep the account open so he could see the emptiness. Then came the services. I pulled up the BMW leasing portal. The lease was in my name, with Stuart listed as the primary driver. He had missed the last 2 payments, which I usually covered without telling him to avoid the late fees. Not today. I called the after-hours support line for the leasing company. I have platinum status with them, so a human answered immediately. "This is Meredith Blackwood," I said, my voice calm. "I'm looking at the lease for the X7. I'd like to report unauthorized possession. The vehicle is no longer in my custody, and the driver is refusing to return it. I am terminating the lease effective immediately. Please initiate the repossession protocol." "Certainly, Ms. Blackwood. Since the vehicle has GPS tracking, we can dispatch a recovery team within the hour. Do we have your permission to retrieve it from the driveway?" "You have my enthusiastic permission," I said. "And please don't ring the doorbell. Just take it." Step 4. The utilities. This was the pettiest move, and I savored it. The electricity and water were essential, and legally I couldn't cut those off instantly without a process. But the luxuries. I logged into the cable and internet provider. Cancel service. I logged into the streaming services, Netflix, HBO, Hulu, Spotify. Change password. I logged into the wine cellar climate control app. System off. And finally, the smart home hub. I watched the security feed one last time. The party was in full swing. Stuart was by the pool, laughing with a drink in his hand. The music was blasting. I opened the smart home admin panel. I had administrator privileges. Stuart only had guest access, though he didn't know it. I changed the master code. I deleted Stuart's iPhone from the authorized devices list. I deleted the new guest, Tiffany, code he had just created. Then I looked at the scene settings. I created a new scene titled Closing Time. Action 1. Turn off all interior lights. Action 2. Lock all exterior doors. Action 3. Set thermostat to 85 degrees. Action 4. Turn off pool heater and pump. Action 5. Activate intruder alert voice warning. Silent alarm to police disabled for now, just the internal audio. I hovered my mouse over the Activate button. My heart was pounding, not with fear, but with adrenaline. This was it. The moment I stopped being the victim. The moment I took back control. He wanted the house. He could have the house. But he was about to find out that the house was a machine. And I held the remote. I pressed the button. On the screen, the lights in the house instantly went black. The music cut out. I saw heads turn. I saw phone flashlights click on. I saw confusion. And then, on the banking tab, a notification popped up. Transaction attempted, Domino's Pizza for $150. Status declined. Another attempt. Status declined. I sat back in my hotel chair, letting out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 4 years. The silence in the hotel room was no longer heavy. It was the silence of a judge's gavel hitting the sound block. Narrator break. If you have listened this far, please like the video and comment the number 1 below so I know that you are amazing and I understand that you are accompanying me throughout this journey. Your help is a huge encouragement, cheering me on. Comment number 1 so I can recognize you. And now listen to me continue telling my story. I closed the laptop. The show was over for tonight. But tomorrow morning, that was when the real fireworks would begin. Morning broke with a brilliant, cruel sunshine that I knew was currently baking the interior of my house. I had set the thermostat to 85 degrees last night, and with the windows likely closed to keep the noise in, it would be a sauna by now. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. at the Ritz, feeling rested for the first time in months. I ordered a full breakfast, eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, and a large pot of coffee. I ate it slowly, savoring every bite, imagining the scene unfolding across town. At 7:15 a.m., my phone began to blow up. First, it was a text from Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor across the street. She was the neighborhood watch captain and had eyes like a hawk. "Mrs. Higgins, Meredith, dear, are you okay? A tow truck just took the BMW out of the driveway. It looked very official. Also, there are trash cans knocked over everywhere." I smiled and texted back. "I'm fine, Martha. Just doing some spring cleaning. Keep watching. Then the calls from Stuart started. 7:20 a.m., missed call. 7:22 a.m., missed call. 7:25 a.m., missed call. I let them go to voicemail. I wanted him to marinate in his confusion. At 7:30, a text from Stuart came through. Stuart, internet is down. Power is acting weird. AC is broken. Need the password for the router. Also, where is the car? Did you take it for a service? He still didn't get it. He still thought these were accidents. He thought I was just at my sister's cooling off. He couldn't conceive of a world where I would actually strike back. I imagined him standing in the kitchen, hungover, a headache splitting his skull. He would be reaching for the coffee maker, my Jura Z10, that cost $4,000. He would press the button for a double espresso to cure his hangover, but he wouldn't get coffee because I had locked the machine through the app. The screen would just say, "User not authorized." The pettiness of denying him caffeine felt incredibly satisfying. At 8 a.m., the panic set in. He tried to order breakfast. I got the notification from Uber Eats on my iPad, which was still logged into the family account. Order failed. Payment method declined. He tried to switch to the backup card. Order failed. Payment method declined. Then a voicemail. I played it on speaker while I finished my tea. Meredith, pick up the phone. Stuart's voice was ragged. Panic edging into the anger. The cards aren't working. The car is gone. Tiffany needs to get to work and she can't call an Uber. What did you do? This isn't funny. You can't just cut me off. I have rights. I'm your husband. Not for long, I whispered. I decided to answer the next text, just to twist the knife. Stuart, call me now. This is financial abuse. Meredith. I texted back. I'm sorry. Who is this? I don't have a husband. I signed the papers, remember? I'm just a stranger, and strangers don't pay for your lifestyle. I could feel his rage through the network. At 8:30 a.m., the doorbell camera alerted me. It wasn't the police. It wasn't a repairman. It was a courier service. Stuart opened the door. He looked terrible. He was wearing wrinkled boxers and a t-shirt. His hair was a mess. Behind him, the living room was a disaster zone. Red cups everywhere, stains on the rug. Tiffany sleeping on the couch, wrapped in a sheet. The courier handed him a large envelope. Sir, for Stuart Wilson? The courier asked. Yeah, that's me. Stuart grunted, snatching the envelope. He probably thought it was the finalized divorce papers from his lawyer, or maybe a check he was expecting. He tore it open right there on the porch. I zoomed in. It wasn't a check. It was the formal notice from the Blackwood Family Trust, and clipped to the front was a letter from Claudia Vance, printed on heavy, terrifyingly official letterhead. Stuart read the first line. I saw his shoulders stiffen. He read the second line. His mouth dropped open. He looked up at the camera. He knew I was watching. He looked right into the lens, his face pale, his eyes wide with a dawning horror. He didn't scream. He didn't rage. He just looked small. He turned around and ran back into the house, tripping over the threshold, shouting for Tiffany to wake up. The realization had landed. The hangover was about to get a lot worse. Because in about 10 minutes, his phone was going to ring, and it was going to be the one person he thought was on his side. The call came at 8:45 a.m. I wasn't privy to it directly, but Claudia recounted it to me later with gleeful precision. However, I got the gist of it because Stuart, in his panic, put it on speakerphone while pacing in the living room, right under my high-fidelity security microphone. His lawyer, Lionel, was on the other end. Lionel, the man who advertised on daytime TV between soap operas. Lionel, you have to fix this. Stuart was shouting, pacing around the red Solo cups. She cut everything. The car is gone. And I just got this letter from her lawyer saying I'm trespassing. Trespassing in my own house. There was a pause. Then Lionel's voice erupted from the phone, so loud it distorted the speaker. You idiot! You absolute colossal moron! Stuart stopped pacing. What? Why are you yelling at me? You said we had her cornered. I just got the discovery file from her lawyer. Lionel screamed. Do you have any idea what you just let her do? Do you know what you signed yesterday? I signed the post-nup. The one you wrote? Stuart stammered, looking at Tiffany, who was now sitting up, looking terrified. "It gives me the house." "It gives you nothing!" Lionel roared. "The house isn't hers, Stuart. The house belongs to the Blackwood Family Trust. The company belongs to the trust. She doesn't own them individually, so she can't sign them over to you." "I don't understand," Stuart mumbled, sinking onto the sofa. "What does that mean?" "It means you forced her to sign a document transferring ownership of an asset you already waived rights to 2 years ago." Lionel was hyperventilating. "Her lawyer sent me the waiver you signed. You acknowledged the trust. And now, by forcing her to sign this transfer under threat of divorce, you have officially committed documentary fraud. You attempted to extort a trust asset. That is a felony, Stuart." "A felony?" Stuart's face went gray. But she signed it. She agreed. She baited you." Lionel shrieked. "She handed you a loaded gun, pointed it at your head, and you pulled the trigger. Her lawyer is talking about pressing charges for extortion and fraud. They have recordings, Stuart. They have texts. They have the video of you live streaming from the house claiming ownership. You confessed on Facebook Live. Fix it," Stuart begged, his voice cracking. "Just tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I didn't know." "I can't fix a felony," Lionel yelled. "I'm dropping you as a client. I am not losing my license because you decided to play tycoon with a shark like Meredith Blackwood. You are on your own. My advice, get out of that house right now before the cops show up." Click. The line went dead. The silence in the living room was absolute. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and Tiffany's shallow breathing. Stuart dropped the phone. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. He looked at Tiffany. He dropped me," Stuart whispered. Tiffany stood up, pulling the sheet tighter around her. "What does that mean, Stu? Do we get the house or not?" Stuart looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the hate in his eyes. Not for me, but for her. For the distraction, for the greed that she had fueled. "There is no house," Stuart said, his voice hollow. "It's a trust. It was never hers to give." "So you're broke?" Tiffany asked, her voice losing all its softness. "Like actually broke?" "I'm worse than broke." Stuart laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. "I'm about to be arrested." He stood up and ran his hands through his hair. "We have to go," Lionel said to leave. "We have to pack." Tiffany took a step back. "I'm not going anywhere with you if the cops are coming. I have a career, Stuart. I'm an influencer. You're a part-time trainer who hasn't paid rent in 3 months." Stuart snapped. "Pack your bags. We're going to my mom's." "I am not going to your mother's trailer," Tiffany shrieked. I sat back in my hotel chair sipping my tea. It was unraveling faster than I had anticipated. The rats were turning on each other. Then my phone buzzed again. It was a notification from the front gate security system. Visitor, Lorraine Wilson. Visitor, Darla Wilson. The flying monkeys had arrived. They must have seen the Facebook live stream or heard the panic in Stuart's earlier calls. They were coming to claim their share of the victory. I watched the feed as Darla's beat-up Honda, the one I paid for, rolled up the driveway. "This," I said to myself, "is going to be entertaining." Lorraine and Darla burst into the house like they were raiding a buffet. Lorraine was wearing a floral muumuu, and Darla was already holding a cigarette, ash falling onto my foyer floor. "Where is the champagne?" Lorraine boomed, spreading her arms wide. "My son, the homeowner. We saw the video, Stu. Finally, you put that stuck-up woman in her place." Stuart was standing in the middle of the living room, frantically throwing clothes into a garbage bag. He looked up wild-eyed. "Shut up, Mom," he hissed. Lorraine froze. "Excuse me? Is that how you talk to the woman who birthed you? There is no house." Stuart screamed, throwing a pair of shoes into the bag. "It's over. She tricked me. The cops are coming." Darla dropped her cigarette. "What do you mean she tricked you? You said she signed the papers." "The papers are worthless," Stuart yelled. "It's all a trust. I'm broke, Mom. I have nothing. The car is gone. The accounts are frozen. And I'm facing jail time for fraud." The transformation on Lorraine's face was instantaneous. The pride vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating sneer. "You mean you didn't get the money?" she asked slowly. "No. And you don't get the company? No. Lorraine looked at Darla. I told you he would screw it up. He never had the head for business. Mom. Stuart looked betrayed. I need help. I need a place to stay. Can we come to your place just for a few weeks until I sort this out? We? Lorraine looked at Tiffany, who was frantically texting on the sofa. I don't have room for you and your whore. Hey! Tiffany shouted. And I certainly don't have room for a son who is going to bring the police to my doorstep. Lorraine sniffed. I run a respectable bingo night. I can't have felons sleeping on my couch. You're abandoning me? Stuart asked, his voice breaking. After everything I gave you? I bought Darla that car. I paid off your gambling debts. With Meredith's money. Darla pointed out unhelpfully. Technically, you didn't give us anything. She did. So call her. Stuart begged. Call Meredith. She likes you guys. Maybe she'll listen to you. Tell her I'm having a breakdown. Tell her to call off the lawyers. Lorraine hesitated. She pulled out her phone. I watched on my screen as my own phone started ringing. Call her, Lorraine Wilson. I stared at it. I let it ring. Then I blocked the number. On the screen, Lorraine looked at her phone, annoyed. She sent me to voicemail. Well, that's rude. Tiffany snapped. She stood up, holding one of my Louis Vuitton tote bags. It looked stuffed. Where are you going? Stuart asked, reaching for her. I'm leaving, Tiffany said. My Uber is here. What's in the bag, Tiff? Darla asked, her eyes narrowing. Just my stuff, Tiffany said quickly, clutching the bag tighter. That's Meredith's bag, Stuart said, realizing. And it looks heavy. What did you take? It's my compensation, Tiffany yelled. For wasting 6 months of my life with a loser. She tried to bolt for the door. Stuart grabbed her arm. Darla grabbed the bag. The three of them wrestled in the hallway, screaming obscenities at each other. The bag ripped open. My jewelry spilled out. My grandmother's pearls. My diamond tennis bracelet. Several expensive watches. You thief! Lorraine shrieked. Those are valuable. Let go of me! Tiffany screamed, scratching Stuart's face. Suddenly, the front door burst open. It wasn't the police yet. It was Mrs. Higgins, my neighbor. She was holding her phone up, recording the whole thing. I've called the sheriff, Mrs. Higgins announced gleefully. And I have you all on video stealing Mrs. Blackwood's property. The police are 2 minutes away. The room froze. Tiffany looked at the spilled jewelry. Stuart looked at Mrs. Higgins. Lorraine looked at the exit. Run! Tiffany screamed. She abandoned the jewelry, shoved past Stuart, and sprinted out the door toward the waiting Uber. Lorraine and Darla didn't wait for Stuart. They turned and ran to their car. Mom, wait! Stuart yelled, running after them. I watched as the Honda peeled out of the driveway, leaving Stuart standing alone on the lawn, barefoot, holding a garbage bag of clothes, while Mrs. Higgins filmed him with a look of pure judgment. He was alone. Completely, utterly alone. And then I saw the flashing lights of the sheriff's cruiser turning the corner. I timed my arrival perfectly. I wanted to be there when the official seal was placed on the door, but I didn't want to be part of the brawl. I pulled my rental car up to the curb just as Deputy Miller was stepping out of his cruiser. Claudia pulled up behind me in her black Porsche. She looked impeccable, holding a leather folder. We walked up the driveway together. Stuart was sitting on the front steps, his head in his hands. He looked up when he heard our heels clicking on the pavement. His eyes were red, his face scratched from the scuffle with Tiffany. When he saw me, he stood up, a flicker of hope crossing his desperate face. Meredith, he choked out. Thank God. You have to stop this. They're treating me like a criminal. Tell them it's a misunderstanding. Tell them we're married. I stopped 10 feet away from him. I adjusted my sunglasses. I didn't look angry. I looked bored. We are married, Stuart, I said calmly. For now. But you are also trespassing on trust property, and Deputy Miller is here to escort you off the premises. Trespassing? Stuart laughed, a hysterical, broken sound. I live here. My clothes are in the closet. We had dinner here last night. Correction. Claudia stepped forward, her voice sharp as a razor. You broke into a property managed by the Blackwood Family Trust. You have no lease. You have no deed. You have no rights. She handed the deputy a file. Officer, here is the restraining order granted by Judge Harmon this morning. Citing domestic disturbance, attempted fraud, and theft. Also included is the eviction notice, effective immediately. Deputy Miller nodded. He was a stern man who had known my father. He looked at Stewart with undisguised contempt. Mr. Wilson, the deputy said, you have 30 minutes to collect your personal essentials. That means clothes and toiletries. No electronics, no valuables, no furniture. Then you need to vacate the property. If you return, you will be arrested. Where am I supposed to go? Stewart cried, looking at me. Meredith, please. I have nowhere. My mom left me. Tiffany stole from me. My cards don't work. That sounds like a you problem, I said. He took a step toward me. I'm your husband. I loved you. I got lost. I got scared about our future. Please, baby. Let's just talk inside. Just us. We can fix this. He was trying the charm. The puppy dog eyes. The soft voice that used to make me melt. Now it just made me nauseous. You didn't love me, Stewart, I said, my voice steady and loud enough for the neighbors to hear. You loved the lifestyle I provided. You loved the safety. And yesterday, when you thought you had stripped me of everything, you didn't offer to fix it. You told me to get out. I took a step closer, removing my sunglasses so he could see my eyes. You said sign or get out. I signed. Now it's your turn. Get out. Stewart stared at me. He looked for the weakness, the hesitation. He found none. He slumped. The fight went out of him. He turned and walked into the house, Deputy Miller trailing close behind him to ensure he didn't steal the silverware. I stood on the lawn. Mrs. Higgins was still on her porch. She gave me a thumbs up. I gave her a small, tired wave. 30 minutes later, Stewart emerged. He was carrying 2 garbage bags and a box of protein powder. That was it. 4 years of marriage reduced to trash bags. Here, I said, tossing something onto the grass at his feet. He looked down. It was a prepaid burner phone. Your cell service is terminated, I said. This has 60 minutes on it. Use it to call a shelter or a friend. Don't call me. He looked at the phone, then at me. You planned this. You planned this whole thing. I prepared, I corrected. You plotted. There's a difference. I'll get a lawyer, he spat, trying to muster one last shred of dignity. I'll sue you for half. You already have a lawyer. Claudia smiled. Oh, wait. Lionel quit, didn't he? Good luck finding another one who will take a fraud case on a contingency basis. Deputy Miller stepped forward. Time to go, Mr. Wilson. Move along. Stewart picked up his bags. He began the long walk down the driveway. He didn't have a car. He didn't have a ride. He just started walking down the street, dragging his bags as the neighbors watched from their windows. I watched him go until he turned the corner. Are you okay? Claudia asked, touching my arm. I took a deep breath. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and victory. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm free. The image of Stewart Wilson walking down the street of our exclusive gated community, dragging black garbage bags like a hobo, became instant folklore in our town. I didn't watch it personally. I went inside to inspect the damage, but the video footage provided by the community security cameras and Mrs. Higgins's Facebook page painted a vivid picture. He walked for 2 miles. He tried to hail a cab, but none stopped. He sat on a bus bench, ironically, one that had an advertisement for Lionel's law firm on it, and made a call on the burner phone I gave him. I later learned he called his brother in Ohio. His brother hung up on him. He called his golf buddy, Mike. Mike told him he couldn't get involved. Finally, a rusty pickup truck pulled up. It was his mother, Lorraine. She had come back, not out of love, but probably because she realized he was her only retirement plan, failed as he was. The footage showed Lorraine screaming at him as he threw his bags into the truck bed. She slapped the back of his head as he got into the passenger seat. They drove off in a cloud of exhaust smoke. Back inside the house, the reality of the violation hit me. The living room smelled of stale beer and cheap perfume. There were cigarette burns on my Persian rug. The Chateau Margaux was a sticky purple stain on the travertin. But it was the bedroom that hurt the most. I walked into the master suite. The bed was unmade. My pillows were thrown on the floor. Tiffany's makeup wipes were scattered on my vanity. It felt violated. Dirty. I stood there, looking at the bed where I had slept for 4 years. The bed where I had tried so hard to be a good wife. Claudia walked in behind me. "We can get a cleaning crew in here within the hour. Biohazard level if you want." "Yes," I said, but first I walked over to the bed. I stripped the sheets off. I pulled the duvet cover off. I grabbed the pillows. "I'm burning these," I said. "Meredith, those are Egyptian cotton," Claudia warned. "I don't care if they are spun from gold," I said, bunching them up in my arms. They touched him. They touched her. They have to go. I carried the bundle out to the fire pit in the backyard. I piled the expensive linens into the stone circle. I doused them with lighter fluid from the garage. I lit a match. The flames caught instantly. I watched the fabric curl and blacken. I watched the smoke rise into the afternoon sky. It was a primal ritual. With every thread that burned, I felt a little lighter. I wasn't just burning sheets. I was burning the lies, the gaslighting, the feeling of not being enough. "Goodbye, Stuart," I whispered. My phone rang. It was Paige. "Meredith," she said, her voice professional but excited. "I just got off the phone with the bank. They finished the audit of the unauthorized transfer Stuart made over the last 2 years. It totals $342,000. File the claim," I said, watching the fire. "And," Paige continued, "the police just called. They found Tiffany. She tried to pawn your tennis bracelet at a shop downtown. She's in custody." "Good," I said. "Press charges. Maximum penalty." "And Stuart, what about him? He's been blowing up the office line. He says he wants to negotiate a settlement." I laughed. It was a genuine, full-throated laugh. "Tell him the only settlement he's getting is the one he signed yesterday. The one where he waived everything." I hung up. The fire was dying down to embers. I turned back to the house. My house. It was dirty. It was messy. And it carried the ghosts of a bad marriage. But the structure was sound. The foundation was strong, just like me. The next 3 days were a flurry of activity. But it was the good kind of busy. It was the busy of reclamation. I hired a professional cleaning service, not my usual maids, but a heavy-duty industrial crew. I told them to scrub everything. Walls, floors, ceilings. I wanted every skin cell of Stuart Wilson eradicated from the property. While they worked, I went into the storage room. When Stuart moved in, he had insisted on modernizing the house. He called my style cluttered and sentimental. He made me pack away my father's book collection, my grandmother's antique tea sets, and the framed photos of my college graduation. He replaced them with cold, abstract art and empty surfaces. "Minimalism is the mindset of success," he had preached. Now I dragged the boxes out. I unpacked my father's leather-bound copies of Hemingway and Steinbeck. I touched the worn covers, smelling the old paper. I placed them back on the shelves in the library, filling the empty spaces Stuart had left. I unpacked the photos. There was me, 22 years old, smiling in my cap and gown, arm around my dad. I looked happy. I looked ambitious. "I miss you," I told the girl in the photo. I realized how much of myself I had packed away to make room for Stuart's ego. I had made myself smaller, quieter, blander, just so he wouldn't feel threatened by my success. Never again. On the 3rd day, I walked into the garage. Stuart's home gym was there. He had bought thousands of dollars of equipment, a Peloton weights, a bench press that he barely used. I called a local charity that worked with at-risk youth. "Take it all," I told them. "Whatever you can't use, sell." Seeing the gym empty out was incredibly satisfying. In its place, I parked my new car, a Porsche Cayenne. I had traded in the BMW. I didn't want the car he had driven. I wanted something new, something that was just mine. That evening, I sat in my newly reclaimed living room. The air smelled of lemon and sage. The shelves were filled with my books. The terrible abstract art was gone, replaced by the landscapes I loved. I poured a glass of wine. Not the Chateau Margaux he had destroyed, that was gone, but a crisp Sauvignon Blanc. I opened my journal. I hadn't written in it for years, because Stuart used to read it if I left it out. "Day 1 of freedom," I wrote. I am 52 years old. I am single. I am wealthy. And I am awake. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Claudia. Subject: Update on Wilson vs. Wilson. Meredith, just a heads up. Lionel has officially withdrawn as Stewart's counsel. Stewart is now being represented by a public defender for the fraud charges. Also, he has filed for bankruptcy. It seems the empire was mostly debt. I closed the email. I felt a twinge of pity, but it was distant, like watching a character in a movie make bad choices. He had had every opportunity. He had a wife who supported him, a home that was safe, a life that was comfortable. But he got greedy. He wanted the golden goose. So he cut it open, only to find there was nothing inside but his own reflection. I took a sip of wine. The house was quiet. No TV blaring sports, no complaints about the food, no gaslighting. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. 6 months later, I stood in the back of a courtroom, wearing a suit that cost more than Stewart's car, if he had one. I didn't have to be there. The divorce had been finalized weeks ago via mediation, which Stewart attended via Zoom from his mother's kitchen table. But today was the hearing for the fraud charges and the civil suit I had filed for the restitution of the stolen funds. Stewart was sitting at the defendant's table. He looked diminished. He had lost weight, but not in a healthy way. His suit was ill-fitting, likely bought at a thrift store. His hair, once perfectly styled, was thinning and dull. He didn't see me at first. He was too busy arguing with his public defender in a hushed, frantic whisper. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Judge Patterson, entered. "Mr. Wilson," she began, looking over her glasses. "We have reviewed the evidence, the bank records, the video footage, the signed documents. It is the opinion of this court that you engaged in a systematic pattern of financial deception." Stewart stood up. "Your Honor, I was just borrowing the funds. I intended to pay it back. My ex-wife, she misunderstood. You spent $342,000 on luxury items, travel, and a mistress, while contributing nothing to the marital estate." The judge read from the file. "You then attempted to coerce Ms. Blackwood into signing over trust assets through intimidation. That is not a misunderstanding, sir. That is predation." The gavel bang made him jump. "Judgment is found in favor of the plaintiff. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $342,000. Additionally, regarding the criminal charge of attempted fraud, you are sentenced to 500 hours of community service and 3 years of probation. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration." Stewart slumped. "I can't pay that. I have no job. I have no money." "Then I suggest you get a job, Mr. Wilson," the judge said coldly. "Garnishments will be applied to any future wages." As the bailiff led him out to process his probation paperwork, he finally saw me. He stopped. The room fell silent. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and longing. I think in his twisted mind, he still thought he could talk his way out of it. "Meredith," he said. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. I looked at the man who had called me an old hag. The man who had planned to break me. "Are you happy?" he asked, his voice bitter. "You ruined my life." I stepped forward, my heels clicking on the floor. "I didn't ruin your life, Stewart," I said, my voice calm, carrying across the room. "I just stopped paying for it." I turned and walked out of the courtroom. Outside, the air was crisp. It was autumn. The leaves were turning gold. Tiffany had taken a plea deal. She pleaded guilty to petty theft and received probation. She had moved back to her hometown in Ohio. Her Instagram account had been deleted after the internet found out what she did. Stewart was living in his mother's basement, working part-time at a car wash. And me? My company had just had its best quarter in history. I had launched a new line of home decor. And I had a date tonight. Not with a man, but with myself, a cooking class in Italy. I was leaving tomorrow for a month in Tuscany. The trip Stewart had promised me, but never delivered. I was going alone, and I couldn't wait. The night before I left for Italy, I hosted a party. It wasn't a networking event. It wasn't a gala. It was a dinner party for the people who had stood by me when the walls were crumbling. The dining room table was set with my grandmother's china. The candles were lit. Claudia was there, laughing with a glass of champagne. Paige was there, having been promoted to vice president of operations. Mrs. Higgins was there, telling the story of the great trash bag walk of shame, for the 10th time, adding more dramatic flair with each retelling. And Mr. Vance, the private investigator, stopped by for a drink. To Meredith. Claudia raised her glass. The woman who proved that the best revenge is not just living well, but living free. Hear, hear. Everyone cheered. I looked around the table. These were people who respected me, not for my money, but for my character. I have a toast, I said, standing up. The room quieted. For a long time. I began, looking at the flickering candles. I thought I needed someone to complete the picture of my life. I thought a big house was empty without a husband. I thought success was lonely without a partner. I paused, smiling at my friends. But I learned that the only thing worse than being alone is being with someone who makes you feel alone. I learned that my value isn't negotiable. And I learned that I am pretty terrified of anyone who tries to take my grandmother's house. Laughter rippled through the room. So, here's to empty spaces. I raised my glass. Because empty spaces are just room for new beginnings. Here's to the trust, and here's to never, ever signing anything without reading it first. We clinked glasses. The sound was like a bell tolling the start of a new era. After dinner, I walked out onto the terrace. The city lights twinkled below. I thought about Stuart one last time. He was probably sitting in the dark somewhere, blaming the world for his misfortunes. He would never understand. He would never get it. He thought he lost because of a lawyer or a prenup. He lost because he underestimated the quiet strength of a woman who has built her own castle. I took a deep breath of the cool night air. I felt lighter than I had in years. The nightmare was over. The story of Meredith and Stuart was finished. But the story of Meredith Blackwood, that was just beginning. So, as Meredith's story comes to a close, we're left with a powerful reminder. True strength lies in knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. Life will often test us, placing obstacles in our path, or people who seek to take advantage of our kindness. But resilience is born not from avoiding hardship, but from rising above it with grace, intelligence, and an unshakable belief in oneself. Meredith's journey teaches us that self-respect is non-negotiable, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from what no longer serves us. She didn't just win. She rebuilt her life on her own terms, proving that even in the face of betrayal, there is always a path forward. What about you? What lessons did you take away from this incredible story? Share your thoughts below, or just comment. Powerful. If you found Meredith's journey as inspiring as I did, I'd really love to hear what you think.